From an early age, I loved movies. It was all about storytelling. And one of the things that became really clear to me is that storytelling is such a powerful tool. Whenever there's people, my dad uses that as an opportunity to tell stories. And I saw how enriching that was for the people who were listening to the stories, who were like engrossed in what he was saying, who were waiting to see what he had to say next. I think that it came down to connection, and I felt as a child that I was so isolated from the world. I felt like the world, everything was happening out there, and the world that was existing inside of me was rich, and it was colorful, and it was interesting and exciting, but there was that veil as a result of not really being able to communicate well. So I thought that theater was a great combination of public speaking and storytelling and using different tools and techniques to engage people, you know, vocal dynamics and setting and really understanding the anatomy of a story. There's tools there to help people communicate, you know, if they're willing to actually reach into that toolbox and use some of those tools. My name is Quentin Charles Williams, AKA Quentin the Poet, and I've primarily been a poet up until this point, but at this point in my life, I'm really looking to expand my horizons, try new creative things, and one of the new creative things that I am trying is a solo performance that at this point in time, we're in the process of workshopping into a full theater production. Poetry is always going to be my first love, but I've always been in theater. I started actually in theater. A lot of people don't know this about me, but when I was a kid, I had a speech impediment. I had a huge stutter, and my older brother found any excuse in the world to bully me. But instead of just going into the corner and boo-hooing, I decided that I was gonna go into theater and practice speaking in public. I think some of that stutter had to do with social anxiety. It was very liberating, but it was exhilarating in a way that I didn't expect. I fell in love with it, and at the age of 36, I was asking myself, you know, what are some ways that I can infuse more joy, more excitement, more creativity into my life? And it just dawned on me that I really just should not stay within the little box of poetry that I've erected for myself. And so I decided to step on out, got representation from a local agency, Reinhardt, doing some commercial stuff, some modeling stuff, some voiceover. And so it's like, okay, how do I combine these things? So that's how the solo performance was born. I really put my heart and soul into the script, and it's different putting your heart and soul into something that is about you. This is a very personal story about how I got to this place in my 30s where I was just disenchanted with life. I felt as though everything was just harder. It was harder than what it seemed like it needed to be. In an effort to overcome this sort of slump where I wasn't really feeling motivated to do much, I decided this is probably the perfect time, if not the only time, where I have an opportunity to really dive deep into some of those limiting beliefs that I have for myself and also make light of it, you know? I don't want to be too serious. I mean, there's some therapy that's happening both in the show and on stage, but I didn't want to make it heavy because that's not my personality. When I engage with my therapist, you know, I'm telling stories that cracks him up. One of the things that I try to explore in this solo performance is this balancing act that happens when the character, his name is Malik, and when Malik decides to come out of the closet, he's simultaneously making different career choices that are more in alignment with what he feels brings him fulfillment and joy versus what he feels might make his parents proud. And so on one end of the spectrum, he, for most of his life, has been striving to make his parents proud, and he's never felt like it's been quite good enough, you know, and whether or not his parents feel like it's good enough, his reality is that he never feels like he's measuring up. it leaves him in this storm of detaching from this people-pleasing mentality while trying to really hone in and sharpen this instrument he has within himself, the heart, to understand what makes him feel excited, what makes him feel expansive, what makes him thrilled for the next opportunity. And then on this third side, he has to figure out how to communicate these things. You know, like he doesn't want to ostracize or isolate his parents. And he doesn't want any of his choices to be misinterpreted as disrespectful. But at the same time, he's living in his body and in his life, and he recognizes that he does need to figure out how he can be comfortable in his skin, as well as when he's working so hard towards these different career goals, that they're actually taking him in a direction that he feels truly committed to, as opposed to just doing something that he thinks other people want him to do. One of the things that we've been really sensitive about is how to depict the fictionalized future version of the character. You know, a lot of the character that's rooted in present day is easy for me to lean on my personal experiences to help build that character. But in terms of the character projecting themselves into the future, you know, that's a huge part of what this play is about, because in this play, Malik had never envisioned his life past the age of 35. Young, gay, black male, statistically speaking, he was thinking, oh, there's any number of ways that are gonna take me out before I get to 30, 35, right? So now he's at that point in his life and he's like, I don't have a script. I don't have a script. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how to please people. So he's actually forced to look inside, and through this exchange with his therapist, they engage in something called psychodrama. So the therapist gives him an assignment to actually write out a narrative of what his life looks like in the future. So Uncle Grandpa, who's the older character, he's a fictionalized projection of who Malik thinks he's gonna be in the future. And so throughout the solo performance, the audience has an opportunity to see how this gay black male is reconciling their future. They lived their life, and yes, it's been heavily motivated by people pleasing, but still, that's his lived experience. And he's not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. He's trying to appreciate that, while carving out a path forward for himself that, as far as mainstream media is concerned, doesn't really exist all that much. There's not a whole lot of archetypes for older gay black males and how they engage with family, how they engage with community, how they engage with the concept of aging and death in general, right? Like, so there's a lot of things that I feel, a lot of topics that are that are universal topics, and then they have that special spin on them that only a gay male would be able to speak to, or only a black male would be able to speak to, particularly in relation to that dynamic between a black man as a father and a black man as a son coming together. But I think that one of the things that's pretty awesome about this process for me is it's given, through the lens of the character Malik, it's given me an opportunity to also take responsibility for some of my shit and be like, okay, yeah, I am an adult. And does that suck sometimes, having all this responsibility and having to make tough choices? Absolutely. But I have to still make these tough choices. And if it upsets anybody, or it doesn't quite hit the mark, then so be it. I'll take it as a learning experience. But the reality is that there's a fear. I've gotten to this place where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do the Fringe Festival, I'm gonna do this solo performance, I'm gung-ho, and I've been in rooms or on stages where I've had to hold the attention of an audience for over 2 hours, where I've been performing, or but to perform all the way straight through with just you on stage, and a lot of this is influenced by your personal story. My life isn't super unique, I think that I encounter a lot of the same emotions and fears, hopes and anxieties as most people, but the thing that I think has been both scary for me and an act of courage is getting really real about what that coming out process felt like for me. Some of the details of the coming out story has changed because, you know, protecting the innocent, but the feelings are totally authentic. And I think that story will resonate with a lot of people, not just because it's a coming out story about sexuality, but this is a coming out story about somebody who's been a people pleaser all their lives, and they're finally beginning to give their own hopes and dreams, talents and skill sets a chance to live in the world in a way that feels authentic to them. So they're coming out of the closet to their parents being like, you know what? It's great that over the last 17 years I've been doing this career and doing it fairly well, but I'm gonna switch gears. And that could be a little bit scary, especially for somebody who's already feeling as though they're not measuring up to their parents' hopes and dreams. I think that very few people, especially in the Black community, have sex, get pregnant, find out the baby's a boy, and are like, I hope that boy's gay. So to live most of your life, and then all of a sudden it's something, a fucking bomb goes off in your body, you're going through puberty, experiencing all these feelings and thoughts that never ever occurred to you, and suddenly, the 13 years prior, where people were throwing around derogatory terms saying, hey, faggot, you know, this, or, you know, dyke that, or fairy this, you know, all of that stuff comes crashing down on you, and you're like, oh, shit, I'm that guy that nobody wants at the family reunion or cookout. I mean, it's quite clear that culture's shifting, but the reality is that there's never been any sort of campaign or like galvanized effort to heal from all of that negative homophobia that a lot of us grew up with. That's a fear, because I'm calling that out, and I don't got any solutions necessarily other than to actually take a look at some of those things within yourself, be honest with yourself, and seek out tools and resources to heal. And one of the skill sets that I've begun to hone over the last few years is how to generate my own joy. I don't need to get validation from external sources all the time. And, you know, it's taken me a long time to get to that place, but it's a beautiful place. And I think that's one of my hopes, is that people come to this show and they feel as though they've got the strength within themselves to generate their own joy. I'm Quentin Williams, and I'm a poet and a playwright.